Alright, let's see. Am I live? Let me reload the page here, make sure the sound is... Alright, there we go. Okay, I'm live. I've put on some music in the background, I hope it's not too loud. But so yeah, I thought I'd try something new. I mean, it's been a while since I've done another video or another stream. Yeah, I know it's tough for me to get organized. I got a book in the works now in the pipelines, and it's I've got a lot of work, and I actually started picked up work on, you know, I started, how do I say this? I got back to working on my original project, which I started last year in November. Actually, before November even, I was already working on my own RPG. So I've picked that back up now. Now that my poetry book is going out, so that gave me the idea to start talking about D&D. So anyway, all that aside, hope everyone's doing fine. Hope you didn't miss me too much. But yeah, I'm back here with some new content, and this is a video I've been sitting on, or an idea I've been sitting on for a video for quite a few for quite some time. So I wanted to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. It's one of my favorite pastimes, obviously. Not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons per se, although I do love Dungeons and Dragons, the older editions. I'm more of an OSR guy now because Wizards of the Coast has thoroughly shed the bed with Dungeons and Dragons, as we all know. And since the topic of Gary Gygax right now, these past few weeks, has been quite how do you say, hot on everyone's lips on Twitter and things like that. And there's been some heated debate about what kind of person he was, who he was, and stuff like that. Obviously, most people are talking about, they released a new book about like the making of the original Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, which like this big. I haven't bought it. I'm not interested in buying it, to be honest. But it talks about, in the introduction, they talk about Gary Gygax being like a sexist and a racist or whatever and stuff like that, and that he uses like antiquated language in his books, and that we shouldn't take it seriously and stuff like that. Well, either way, believe it or not, that's actually not what I'm here to talk about. So what I'm actually more interested in is where does Gary Gygax come from? Actually, why is this flipped even? Give me 1 second. I need to fix this because this is my OCD. This pisses me off. Let me see. Flip horizontal. There you go. Okay, so this is the correct perspective. So I don't know. But there have been some things about Dungeons and Dragons that have obviously always been interesting, right? So you had the Satanic Panic, and people were like paranoid about Dungeons and Dragons introducing people to Satanism and stuff like that, which is obviously nonsense. Well, I mean, is it though? That's a good question. I wouldn't say Satanism per se, but there's definitely some things that we could touch upon in that regard as well. But so, let's just... let me see if I switch screens here. What will happen? The desktop audio is off. Wait, let me just turn that on because I did put on some music. Yeah, okay. All right. So let's head to Wikipedia and see what it says about Gary Gygax. Okay, let's start there. American game designer, best known for co-creating the pioneering tabletop role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. So, as you may understand, he's not the actual creator of the game, right? So he created what we call Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the first edition, as this. Wait, that's this here, right? So first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That's his first complete creation, and the first book that he wrote for that is actually the Monster Manual. So he was actually working backwards. So he wrote the Monster Manual, and I think he wrote the Player's Handbook and then the Dungeon Master's Guide. Although it could be the other way around. I don't remember. It's not that important. But he also obviously worked on the little white box, which is the zero edition, let's say. So, and basically in there in that set and in the Greyhawk supplement, he basically laid out like a first preliminary sketch of what was going to become Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But this was way before. This was like during when D&D was still like in its infancy, just fresh off of Chainmail, which was a war game. So he started out as a war gamer. So anyway, let's see. So he was born in Oak Hill Cemetery, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So this is also very interesting, right? So if you watch Sean Ross, like Hatzefrats, Gure and stuff, you'll notice he talks about Wisconsin. He calls it Wisconsin, and there's a reason for that. It's no coincidence that the area is called Lake Geneva, right? And it's even funnier because later on in his career, when D&D becomes well, it's actually not even because he and his club, let's say, they were playing these war games, and they had this convention in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is called Gen Con, Geneva Convention. And so you have to understand that, like, how deeply entrenched this whole culture is in the whole, like, in war games and role-playing games, in Dungeons and Dragons, and in Gary Gygax's mind, right? And so that's basically what I want to talk about today. I'm not even, I don't know about like his religious beliefs and about whatever, but it's funny to think that, once you start looking into Switzerland and all the stuff they've done and their alleged neutrality and stuff like that, and then you get the Satanic Panic and Dungeons and Dragons, and that all kind of seems to somehow be related to all that. It's pretty weird, that you start asking questions, but apparently there's no one else who's even thought of talking about that. So that's what I'm here to do right now. So his name, right? Gary Gygax. So if we look at the name Gygax, family name. Okay, Gracianization is Gygax is a German language surname, language, mainly distributed in Switzerland. Gygas and Gygas are related surnames. It is a Gracianization of German surnames with the meaning of giant, such as Riese, Ries, and Heune. Notable people with this surname include blah blah. So Gary Gygax is obviously there. And obviously, if we look at the distribution, let's see. I think was this the one? There's some of these sites have like the maps where you can see where they're mostly located, right? Wait, let me just mute Facebook because that pisses me off. I'm just gonna close it actually. So as you can see, Switzerland has probably the highest concentration of Gygaxes in the world. So there's no doubt that Gary Gygax, is of Swiss descent, right? And there's more indications to that end. So in order to let's see, wait. Okay, so we need to change the, let's see here, the window. In order to demonstrate that a bit further, we can open up the player's handbook of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition. And if we go to the, let's see, to the equipment section, I think it is. Well, I'm pretty sure. Let's see if I can find it this way. Ah, okay. Alright, wait, I'll have to do it. Let's see, equipping the character. Weapons. So, it seems like Gary Gygax had a real thing for polearms, right? So, you wouldn't expect. I'm trying to find the page here. You wouldn't expect like a game like this to have such a heavy emphasis on polearms, but here they are. Glaive, Guisarme, Guisarme Vouge, Halberd. The lance, okay. Oh. Maybe it's actually in 0E. Oh no, wait, here it goes on. We have the Bardiche, the Bec de Corbin, right? The Bec de Corbin is actually a pole hammer. Another Bilgisarm this time. Oh wait, I'm actually repeating myself. Wait, we need to go further up actually. The Fauchard fork, and all that stuff. So all these weapons, right? These are weapons that the Swiss mercenaries used. So he basically, it seems like he grew up with this, with stories, obviously, of his ancestors, and all the wars they fought in Europe and all that stuff. Let me see if I can D Gary Gygax polearms. See if I can find an actual screenshot of because that was from on 0E. He actually added all these pictures, I don't know if, yeah, I think that's the one. Oh, it's in Unearthed Arcana. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay, because that's another book that he wrote. Here by Gary Gygax, which has like extra classes and stuff like that. Let me see if I can find it. If I can find the polearms. Here you go. All right, look at this, dude. Oh wow, he just went all out with these, and I don't even know what the nomenclature of polearms. Like he wrote a whole fucking academic essay on polearms, right? So that's another aspect of who Gary Gygax is, apparently, right? So, and there's more. I'm only getting started, obviously. But so what that, and then if you combine that with the basic premise of Dungeons and Dragons, which is basically, you're an adventurer, or you're basically a mercenary, right? You go into dungeons, you go in search of fame and fortune, and all that stuff. So it kind of follows from that historical context, or from this background that he grew up in, and it's and also from the war games that he used to play, because they have the same. Oh, hey pirate, thanks man. Yeah, sorry, I don't know how long that message had been there. But yeah, so. But the thing is, like, you wouldn't take a polearm into a dungeon, that's kind of a weird thing. But it's kind of like his obsession, let's say. But and it's funny too because like you would imagine that if we're talking about fantasy games, fantasy stories and stuff like that, usually we associate it at least us like trad Europeans or like not non-Swiss Europeans, most Europeans, I would say, associate it with Tolkien and with like the High Middle Ages, right? The Arthurian sagas. I don't know, like Abelard and Eloise, or what's the other guy? I forget his name. I forgot his name actually. I don't remember, but you know what I mean, right? Or at most like Robin Hood or something, stuff like that. So it's a bit like we tend to think more about like the heroic Middle Ages, while D&D is more like hardwired into like the adventurer, the late Middle Ages, right, or the early Renaissance, right? So the heroes are adventurers. They're out for money, not necessarily, not they're not serving like a lord or something, or a higher good or something, or ideals like that are generally expected in like medieval tales, stuff like that. So and that's one, and it's funny too because that's one of the things that's always bothered me with Dungeons and Dragons. As much as I love it, it's always been kind of it's always felt kind of strange to me that that's the only goal, going after treasure and killing monsters. But there's more. So if we go to the classes, right? We have wait, let me change the screens again. If we go to the classes, we have a few standard ones, right? So the fighter has a few subcategories, right? We have the Paladin and the Ranger. So the Paladin is obviously very interesting, and I still need to do my video on the Paladins and the Paladins, where that term even comes from, but we can make a start here, right? Because the Paladins were the knights of Charlemagne, right? So and it's interesting too because like in Dungeons and Dragons, they're at least originally, now that's no longer the case, but originally they were required. They had the highest requirements, right? So they had to have, let me see, they had to have like 17 minimum 17 charisma, and the maximum is 18, right? So they had to have high, like almost max charisma. And they had to be lawful good, and they had to have a high wisdom score, among others. But they also had to be strong, and they also had to be relatively tough. So if we see, let's see, where's the prerequisites? Character classes, Paladin. Wait, following strictures. Benefits of the Paladin. The Paladin, blah blah blah. So he had to have. Yeah, he had to be human. You couldn't be an elf paladin or dwarf. That's also changed now. Must be human, have a strength of at least 12, a minimum intelligence of 9, a wisdom of 13 or more, a minimum constitution of 9, and no less than 17 charisma. So, and you could cast spells and stuff like that. And then you have the ranger, who is very similar actually. Those are my two favorite classes actually, right? But in AD&D they were both very, very strict, right? So the ranger also had to be good, but he doesn't have to be lawful good necessarily. He can be lawful, chaotic, or neutral. And he also has some pretty high requirements, but god damn it, okay. Let me just close this thing here because it's pissing me off. Quit Telegram. Okay. So they don't have to be lawful per se, but they can be lawful, neutral, or chaotic good, but they have to be good aligned. Strength no less than 13, intelligence no less than 13, wisdom no less than 14, and 14 or greater constitution. So actually their stats are also pretty
pretty stringent, right? And then the Ranger is actually one of the strongest classes in AD&D and in Zero E as well, because the Ranger starts out with let's see, where is it? Benefits. Oh wait, I need to go here. So the Ranger starts with 2 hit dice, right? So even the Paladin only starts with a D10, right? So his initial hit points at level 1,
his maximum is 1 to 10, plus maybe his constitution bonus. While the Ranger has 2d8, so he has 2 dice instead of 1. And so my theory is that the Ranger was designed originally for solo players, right? As a solo character. If you only have one player, let him play a Ranger, he can survive on his own. You know, that's his whole shtick, is to be able to survive in the wild. But not only that, he gains like at let's see, what is it? At level here. At level 9. No, sorry, at level 8 he gains druid spells. And at level 9 he also gains magic user spells. So he's the only class that can do both divine and arcane magic, if you will. Those are later terms that are applied to druid and magic and how do you say, magic user spells in later editions. But you get what I mean, right? So divine magic is inspired by the gods, so the druids do cast divine magic, while arcane magic is, you know, from the occult. You're reading books and stuff like that. It's actually a stupid distinction, because in real life it's one and the same, but okay, that's a different story. But the funny thing is, like in Zero E, the druid spells were cleric spells even. But back then you didn't have druids yet, or actually you did. They came out in the Greyhawk supplement. I keep saying Greyhawk now because that's my game and I keep confusing them. But in the Greyhawk supplement you actually did have druids. But the Ranger didn't have druid spells. The Ranger had cleric and magic user spells originally, which is even weirder, because you know, we tend to think of the Ranger as like you know, Aragorn or like Robin Hood, you know. These are kind of the archetypes that they're playing with, like a hunter in the woods with his bow and stuff like that. So why does he know spells? But there's you know, there have been some things that I've been looking into lately that have made me conclude that I think there's some esoteric background to this, which made, you know, and I don't know if Gary Gygax was aware of it, but there seems to be like this osmosis, let's say, and I don't even know what literature that comes from. You know, it might be in his appendices, you know, because he has like a list of recommended literature you could look into. But yeah, but so to explain what I mean, you know, you have this whole theory about the, you know, about the standing stones and about the mishpas and the druids obviously are also related to that, because they also had the standing stones and stuff. And then you have the magicians in the towers and all that stuff. So all these patterns are kind of coalescing in this one archetype. There's an article I can link in the description below. And once I find it again, because I don't know if I can find it, but there, you know, it talks about the standing stones of the Hebrews, right, of the Israelites, and how, you know, those were like the initial form of towers, and you know, later they evolved into actual towers that became like academies of learning and stuff, where all these initiates gathered and learned all their tricks and stuff. But so the idea is that these people were, at the same time, they were scholars as well as like like border guards, and like, you know, because they inhabited high places in the towers, in the mountains and stuff like that. And they, you know, so they not they had a lot of time because they were isolated, but they also had, you know, they had an overview over the landscape, so they could see who was coming and who was going and stuff like that. So they could inform their king of impending danger, or if like a trader came or something, you know, stuff like that. So they were kind of like in between, like a guardsmen, messengers, and scholars. And I suspect also that the three magi were also like that, you know, and warriors too, you know. So you had this whole coalescence of different disciplines that were coming together, and maybe they were not all personified by the same person, but you know, we're talking about like schools of learning as well. So they had pupils and things like that. They had students. They had libraries, right? So I even suspect, for example, that the Library of Alexandria and the Lighthouse of Alexandria were one and the same thing. That's a theory I came up with. I have no idea if that's true. It can't be confirmed, but you know what I mean. So that's one aspect, and then you have the Paladin. That's the other half of that story. So it's pretty funny how that ends up. You know, how these archetypes end up in this game. You know, and then obviously you also have magic users and clerics and assassins and stuff like that. Assassins are also, you know, the archetype of the assassin. I think that's in Unearthed Arcana. Character classes. Here you go. So we have the in the Unearthed Arcana. Oh wait. Thief Acrobat. Wait. Are you serious? Oh, maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe it's in a different. I would have sworn maybe it's in the. Oh, there you go. Okay, so it's actually in the player's handbook. It's not even in the extra book in the Unearthed Arcana. It's actually in the player's handbook. So the assassin is also in there. You know, he's good at backstabbing and stuff like that. He's very similar to the thief, but he's more combat oriented. And obviously the assassin is also inspired by the Hashashim, who were also similar to the Mishpa, you know, in the mountains, in their towers and stuff like that. They had a similar tradition, if not the same tradition, you know. So yeah. So that's as far as classes go, I guess. I guess there's more you could say about that. Maybe, oh yeah, you also have the monk. Monk is obviously more like, you know, more like Eastern inspired and stuff like that. But there's some, I don't know. There's some more things that I've noticed over the years that I've been playing these games. So obviously you have monsters as well, right? So you have the monster manual, and one of my favorites in this thing, and it's funny too because like he came up with that. That's not even because you also have the let's see. You also have the Fiend Folio, for example, right? So this is kind of like the Unearthed Arcana, but for monsters, right? So this one was written by a subsidiary, by the British subsidiary of TSR. So it's like completely different perspective, and for some reason it's one of the best books for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But then in the original monster manual, written by Gary Gygax himself, and I can show you here.
Right, you have two interesting monsters, right? You have the ogre, right? And it's a giant, a type of giant, but it's a smaller one, right? But he's a brute basically. And they're cannibals. They're not very smart, but they're very strong and very dangerous. And then you have the ogre mage. And they're completely different.
Completely different thing, you know, but they are still the same. And it's funny because he calls them Japanese ogre here, right? Japanese ogres, ogre magi. So he basically means like the oni, right? So and they're always depicted like in this Japanese attire, and usually they have a naginata or like a dai katana or something like that. You know, they kind of have this Oriental um, air about them. But they have magical abilities and stuff like that, and you know you kind of start wondering like where does that even come from? Why specifically? Why does he specifically create a Japanese ogre and then he calls it ogre mage specifically? And so my theory is that this also comes from some sort of esoteric knowledge. I'm not sure if he even was like conscious of that stuff, but like if we take it etymologically, the word ogre comes from Yugur, right? And that's cognate to Hungarian, right? So Hungarian, Yugur, and you know, we can confirm that that's where the word ogre comes from etymologically. That's not even I can even how do you say prove it. Let's see, ogre etymology. Ogre Wiktionary. Oh, wait. Okay. They claim it comes from Orcus. Meanwhile, Orcus is also in the Monster Manual, but that's a different story. But no, that's... Oh. A cruel person. Ogre, ogress, brutish giant. French ogre. Wait. Where did I even find that? No. Wait. Ogre. Oh, come on. It's gotta be somewhere. Yugur. Is, I believe, nothing more than someone putting an idea. Is it though? Okay. Maybe it's not. Okay, maybe it's not the official etymology. But even here, you can see that this theory has gained some traction, right? Quite right. Although Yugur and Ogre Ugrian are not actually related either, despite the similarity in sound. Okay, blah blah. But so that theory exists. It's not. It's, you know, I didn't pull it out of my ass, at least. So yeah. But what I was going for with that statement is you have ogres, you have ogre mages, and you have, for example, right? You have the Devi, I think they were called, in Georgian mythology, right? Here you go. Many-headed ogres. They even say they're ogres. Here. The lowest underworld, inhabited by the ogres, serpents, and demons. So basically, you have these demons in Georgian mythology that are called Devi, but they're technically ogres and stuff like that. So my theory, at any rate, is that the ogre and the ogre mage are Gog and Magog, are the personification or like a distillation, let's say, of the idea of Gog and Magog, right? So, and you that's cognate in the names as well, right? So Gog is just the brute, it's just the slave race, let's say, and Magog are the magi of the ogre race. And you have other indications of that being the case as well. So if you read let's see if I can find it. if you read the Uralinda book, I have a few editions of the book now. I have to see if I can find the right one. I have this one, but that's not actually the book itself, although it does include it. Well, might as well just you know, the Uralinda book. If you just if you get this, you get it in there as well. It might be even better for you. But they talk about like the Finns and the Magyars, right? And the Magyars are the Hungarians, and the Finns are the Finns, right? They're both like Turkic or like Turco-Turanic races. Their language is an anomaly in Europe because they're not. It's not Indo-European. Indo-European. They're part of their own language family, right? Which is the Finno-Hungaric, let's say, but it's considered a Turanic language family. And in the Uralinda, they are described as the how do you say, the antagonists or the enemies of the Freya. The Freya are the free people, the Frisians, the Aryans, basically. Although that's also a bit of a double thing because you know we also have the Aryans, the Iranian Aryans, let's say, and that's all again related with the Uyghurs and with the Turanic peoples as well. So it's it does muddy the waters, but using the word Aryan, I mean. But so yeah. So we have the you know, for some reason, I don't know, it might be subconscious, you know. I don't even know where these ideas come from, where
he came up with that stuff. And obviously we have the orcs as well, and the orcs are the same thing as ogres technically. You know, they're just the foot soldiers. It's basically just Gog and Magog as well. Although orcs are closer to like player characters, so they're like level 1 monsters. So technically you could play them as a character as well and just take normal levels with a normal class with them. So you have orc shamans and stuff like that. And you also have the goblins and the kobolds and all that stuff, which are you know, in real life mythology,
they're just variations of the same themes, you know. But so yeah, so that's another thing. Let's see, what else do we have? I think I actually touched upon everything I wanted to say. I don't know if there's any. I mean, there's not many people watching this, but you know, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to oblige. But yeah, while I'm at it, I might as well present my own game because that's what I'm mostly working on now. I've already done a video on this, but you know, I'm planning on expanding on some of those themes as well, you know, because I actually want to make a setting that's kind of inspired by all this Tartaria stuff and all that stuff, and make it a little bit more explicit and a little bit more real, let's say. But yeah, actually, maybe I should do that separately in a separate video. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just some food for thought. I don't know if this makes a lot of sense. Maybe it'll make more sense if we start talking about the Palatines, because that's pretty important too, because they're connected to the Swiss, right? The Swiss themselves were originally Palatines as well. That's what I believe, at least, and they're connected to the Templars as well. So my theory is obviously that the Templars are corrupt Palatines. Right, and the Palatines are basically like were originally like the warrior elite of Europe, and they existed everywhere. They weren't just in Germany, right? It was like a catch-all term because you even have the Philistines and the Palestinians and all that stuff, which are cognate terms, and you had them in Rome as well, you know, and stuff like that, and you still have them, right? Because the Vatican has the Swiss Guard and stuff like that. So, and that's, you know, that's the proof, you know, because the Templars went to Switzerland. They trained these people in the art of warfare, and you know, and sent them across the continent as mercenaries. And I think they were, how do you say? I think they were bribed or they were bought by the Pope, you know, and that's how they became separated from the rest of the Palatines, who were later persecuted, you know, during the 30 Years' War, which was like the how do you say? That was like the golden age of Swiss mercenary warfare, you know. The Catholic Church, like the Jesuits and the Inquisition, were persecuting the Palatines, and they had to flee to first to England and then to America. But that's all for another day. But yeah, so that's I think that's how that all kind of connects, and yeah. So that's what D&D, you know. There might be more to this than we initially suspected, I guess. But yeah, that's it for now. It's a short stream. I just thought I'd post something because it's been so long, and I wanted to do this video for a long time now. Obviously, you know, about Gary Gygax himself, you know, I have nothing against the man. I love his game. I love his game. So all that stuff that's been happening lately, and Elon Musk talked about, you know, condemned Wizards of the Coast and stuff. Ooh, big fucking deal. You know, Elon Musk himself is part of the same elite, you know. But yeah, you know, the problem isn't there's no problem actually, but you know, Gary Gygax's character was never in question, but nobody's ever questioned, like, where did these ideas even come from, you know? That's much more interesting to me, I guess. Beyond politics, beyond, you know, beyond Wizards of the Coast, you know, there's a whole esoteric tradition or treasure trove within D&D that we're not even aware of, you know, and the whole game essentially is like magic. You're making like you're making your imagination manifest in the game world, you know. it's actually pretty wild the stuff he came up with, and it's all about magic, obviously. You know, you're playing a magic user, you're playing a cleric, and you're calling upon the power of the gods to heal and to do stuff like that. It's no problem, Jeff. Thanks for checking it out. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if it's what you'd expect or whatever. It's a short stream. We've been going for like 3/4 of an hour. But like if you go to my channel and you go to live streams, you'll find it back once we're done. You can watch it from the beginning. We're basically talking about the esoteric stuff behind Dungeons and Dragons, you know, because there are some weird things going on in Dungeons and Dragons that we, you know, and it's funny because, you know, you had the Satanic Panic, but and in the end that actually helped popularize it, you know, and who's to say that he didn't actually somehow do that on purpose, you know? So yeah. Oh, you actually met him? Oh, nice. Wow, that's awesome. I wish yeah, that's awesome. I wish I, you know, wish I had that opportunity, but yeah, there's no such luck. But yeah, obviously, so what I'm talking about is more like, because, you know, I'm generally talking about conspiracy theories and alternate history and stuff like that on this channel, but I'm also developing my own RPG and stuff. I have my own video on that, or a separate video on that. If you're interested, you might. It's like an OSR type game, but obviously I'm also kind of, you know, because of all the stuff that's happening and all the other things I'm also interested in, I thought I'd bring those two together, you know. So anyway, guys, it's been fun. It's been a fun little hour. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.